Welcome to Act 2 You're On. Join us weekly at our studio roundtable as Rhonda, Kate,
and Linda invite spectacular guests to weigh in on staying sexy, vibrant, and healthy.
Launch your next great act with authenticity and purpose. Summon your courage, superstar, and step into the limelight. So grab a coffee
or a martini
and let's set the stage for a grand entrance. It's Act 2. You're on.
Greetings, friends, and welcome to Act 2 You're On, A2YO, a community of change makers igniting personal and societal renaissance through inspirational conversation and purpose-driven topics. I'm Kate Levy, and I have the great pleasure of podcasting with two people I genuinely love.
Rhonda Garvin-Conaway.
I'm Linda Ty.
And we are thrilled to have a very special guest, Chef David Blessing. And
but before we go on, we want to make sure that we thank our wonderful sponsors. We have talented producers Susan Synergy Nagel and Kathy. It's all about the Mission Carswell.
Yes. I was so excited. I was trying to jump into our interview, and I have to tell you, this is a delicious day in the A2YO studio because we have one of Boston's great chefs and a fascinating fellow chef, David Blessing. And let me tell you a little bit about Chef Dave. David Blessing has been a professional chef for over 30 years in all aspects of the culinary profession, including luxury hotels, catering, independent restaurants, private clubs, and food service. Chef is currently Vice President of Culinary Arts and Development for Longwood Venues and Destinations, and recently started his own business, DB Culinary Provisions. I have taken cooking class with Dave. I have eaten his heavenly food. And I also happen to know he's very committed to health and well-being. It is my pleasure to introduce our guest today, Chef David Blessing. Welcome, Dave.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here, and I look forward to our conversation. And that's going to be a great fun. So thank you for having me.
Well, we're thrilled you're here. And I have to say that I thank you for having such a huge influence on my husband, who's a wonderful cook. He's not a chef, but he has learned so much from you. And my stomach is grateful to you. So as we are all foodies and we come from a family of foodies, I'm particularly curious about what inspired your love of food and influenced your decision to become a chef.
Yeah, sure. So, I grew up in Portland, Maine, which is, I think most people know now it's an incredible food town. Certainly when I grew up, it wasn't what it is today. But I'd say everybody I know in my family and my friends, everyone is into food and really loves food. And it's partly a Maine thing. Everyone has gardens and whatnot. But I'd say more than anything was my family. My last name is German, but everyone in my family is Italian except for my great grandfather who gave me the last name. So both sides of my family, I grew up in that classic Italian scenario where Sundays the big pasta dinner with screaming aunts and uncles, and it was all about food and abundance and family getting together. The other side of my family, my mother's side, was more, they were Italian, but more gardeners and farmers and lived on a lake. And so that influence, having both sides of that Italian influence, was just kind of instilled in me. I didn't decide what I was going to do with my life or become a chef until I think my junior year, but I just never thought of it. And then when it hit me, I said, well, of course, that's what I'm going to be a chef because everyone in my family cooks and we garden and we eat food. And so they just growing up in that environment, always about food and family and communal sharing of food and all that was I guess the major influence for me becoming a chef.
That's so interesting to hear about that. And I'm thinking about what you've gone on to do in the restaurant industry and how that's a little bit different than the experience that influenced you to cook. So tell us about what it was that got you interested in being in that demanding industry of restaurants and hospitality.
It's a good question because, I think a lot of people, but people grow up and they have that same experience that I did. But my father did own 2 restaurants. My great uncle still, his family, he's passed away now, but own a famous restaurant in Portland. And my parents met in a restaurant, so I was kind of destined to be a chef in a restaurant. But also the physical demands of it. We joke around. A lot of chefs, we're a little bit masochistic in that we enjoy the pain but my brain works a certain way, and I probably had ADD, and a lot of chefs are driven to towards that industry because it's constant stimulation, and it allows you to express yourself in a creative way that is not in the typical construct of a 9-to-5 job. So I've always been attracted, even today. I mean, even with my many years of experience, I'm happy that I still enjoy cooking, and it's a hobby of mine, and I do it for my family and my friends. And I'm not burnt out, and I don't know that every chef can say that. So I just enjoy everything about it. As I'm older now, it's impossible for me to, run a restaurant like I used to. And I really enjoy what I'm doing now. But for years, even though I missed birthdays and holidays and all that for many years, I get such a reward out of that hard work. And everyone in my family is a hard worker, So I love the physicality of it, the challenges, and the mental challenges as well.
Thank you for that. I love hearing about the creative nature of your work, and that it is still a love for you, and you've been able to keep that alive for yourself.
Yeah, I'm happy because it's easy to get burnt out, and I wouldn't say bitter, but the passion for food is something I think you have to cultivate. And maybe having kids later, when I was a little bit older, I was able to kind of do all the hard work and do the sacrifice. And then when I started having kids, I really need to get out of the hotel and the restaurant world because it's not a healthy place. It wasn't for me at that time. And so, it was good timing in that, maybe my second act, if you will, where I didn't need to have that, restaurant, that craziness and that excitement. I really wanted to focus on my family and a different career path, but still be creative and rewarded and all that stuff.
Talk to us about that. I first, I just want to say I'm a sculptor is one of the things that I do. And so I really relate to the physicality of making the art, and the passion for making the art. And I see cooking very similar. There's a physicality to it, and that passion for putting out that very creative process for sure. But tell us about that and that shift from going from the crazy industry to shifting, as you said, your act 2 or next iteration of.
Sure. I think, maybe the best example or the best way to talk about that shift was, I was a chef of the Four Seasons Hotel, which is a coveted job. And I really grew up there. I mean, I worked for the company for, I think, 14 years, 2 in San Francisco and the rest of the time in Boston. It was a line cook that worked my way up to be executive chef. So I was very proud of that. But working for it was a great, a really great situation because I thought I was only a restaurant guy when I went there, but I loved the organization and the structure of a corporate, kitchen, and the fact that I held multiple jobs. I was constantly, changing. So it wasn't that I was just doing the same thing for 10 years. But I didn't realize until I left, how much. We always joke this life after the Four Seasons where I was in this box and I could, play within that box. But when I left, that's when I really flourished my creativity where I didn't have to worry about, is there bacon? We can't put bacon in the chowder or different things because there's, a lot of our clientele doesn't eat bacon, So there was always these kind of limitations. And when I went to Longwood, where, it's my menus, really nobody is censoring me or telling me what to do or not to do, did I really flourish. And the creativity just exploded where to not have the confines of that allowed me to explore things that I didn't explore, or didn't even know I wanted to explore. And then also, traveling and different experiences and things that I kind of sought out to stimulate me from a culinary standpoint, open that up. I'm blabbing. I'm not sure I 100% answered the question, but as I talked, I realized how important the creative aspect is. It's probably the most important thing in my culinary profession right now for me, to inspire my chefs, to constantly not be the older chef, the seasoned chef who is not relevant anymore. So I think I'm more creative than I've ever been in my entire career. So I love that.
And that's very encouraging for our listeners to be hearing, for sure. I'm hearing you talk about the challenges that you faced, the demands on your body, but also on your mind. And I wonder if there was a pivotal moment that you experienced that maybe changed the trajectory of your career or your life.
Yeah, there was one incident in particular, and it didn't change immediately. But I look back and I said, that's why I made those decisions a couple of years down the road or whatever it was. And so I was running the restaurant, Aujourd'hui, Christmas Eve, and it's just the holidays are insane and crazy. And I knew that typically we get out around 10:30, 11, and my wife and my best friends were, she was over there celebrating. And I said, look, I'll be there by like 11:30, and it's late, but at least I can have some kind of Christmas with my friends, and I had to work early the next day. So, very long story short, something happened and there was a problem, and I couldn't get out when I wanted to. We got hit with room service, and when I finally, it was like 11 or maybe midnight, and I called, okay, I'm out now. They had wrapped it up and left, and they said they just couldn't wait anymore. And at that moment, I was like, my goal is to not ever work a holiday and miss out on those, those things with either my future family or whatever. And it took me a while to get to that point, but I had given up so much, and I just wasn't ready to give up any of those experiences anymore. Like, I had put my time in, I worked so hard, and that's all I wanted was just a couple hours. And it wasn't anyone's fault. The industry just didn't allow it to happen. And I said, I need to change that. And so I did. It may have, it took a couple of years down the road. It wasn't that simple, but, and I wasn't willing to compromise or, to give that up. I didn't have to do less quality food or a job that was not as, impactful. So that's why it kind of took a while, but that was one thing. I mean, there was many others too, but yeah, I think that was the one of the major moments that I was just like, I can't do this anymore,
Mm-hmm. That's very interesting to hear. And I hear your values really coming through as you respond to that question. And when you spoke about your creativity, those are driving forces. Can you talk about how you do stay committed to reinvention? Maybe it's the values influence or your driving creative force. How does one stay committed to the idea of reinventing themselves, or you personally?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know if it was a conscious decision or just kind of morphed from, having left the confines of the structured corporate environment. So that certainly helped. But, I think when I realized that I as a chef, you're not just really, you have notoriety because you work at a really great restaurant. It was a 5-diamond restaurant, a 4 Seasons hotel, and I think oftentimes that's the pinnacle, or what's perceived as a pinnacle. And when I open myself up to, I can find inspiration anywhere, where certainly travel and art and, the typical ones, but, things like, okay, I was cooking foie gras and caviar and lobster and scallops, but there's something to be said for a really great damn burger, and to craft it with the same care that you would a dish in a 5-star restaurant. And, seeing other chefs who, across the country who were really well known that, they had a high-end fine dining restaurant, but then they opened, say, a burger joint or a taco place. And what I realized is that, as long as, the spirit of what you're creating is amazing food, and you're getting the best quality ingredients, you put the same effort into it. That's when I realized, I just love food, and I started to make more simple things that were elevated. And I think my style now is kind of classics with a twist, or everyday items that are really recognizable that everybody enjoys, but to do it in such a high elevated way that people are blown away. Like, I didn't know that it could be this good, and that's kind of where what I'm really focused on now. I make this salsa, and it's something I want to take off and get into retail eventually. And it's, when I say it's just, everyone knows salsa. Oh, great, you make a salsa, but my salsa is different in that there's a lot of ingredients, and the way I make it is different. And I'm taking that approach for fine dining chef would, and making a salsa that is, I just couldn't ignore people saying, "Oh my God, this is so good, you should sell it." And that really did launch my business. So being open to all those things, and realize that, the worth of, or the notoriety as a chef isn't just in their high-end restaurants, but it's everyday chefs that are just kind of doing a great job and want to put out excellent food. And I think it's more approachable. It doesn't have to be so fussy,
I took a class, one of the classes I've taken with Dave was on poke bowls, which I love. And, I hadn't thought much other than, oh, this is going to be fun. But we started making your sauce. I was drooling. I almost couldn't wait to get, like, how you just start to salivate, like, I'm getting sloppy. You are a very special chef. I know that we're going to talk a little bit later about how folks can learn about classes, but boy, I cannot recommend them highly enough. But you need to be warned when you do look this up. You shouldn't do it on empty stomach, because you'll be drooling. So I know that you're very committed to health and wellness. We actually met at RX Strength with the great athletic guru, Jeff Butterworth. In fact, we'll be interviewing him in a few weeks, which is fantastic. But it does occur to me that that must be very important, because it's such a physically demanding job for your mind, for your body to stay in shape. And I know you're very committed to that. And were you always, or is that something that was a requirement of your job?
No, it's really interesting. My relationship with fitness and athletics in general, and being healthy is kind of a lifelong thing. I think, like a lot of people, you have kids, and for probably 5 to 7 years when they were babies, and, I was very unhealthy. And that was the time towards the end of the 4 seasons where I had a demanding job. I had kids at home. I was not taking care of myself. And mentally was just not, when I say not healthy, like in every aspect, I didn't sleep enough. I went out, and had drinks after work when I should be home, because I just couldn't shut my brain off, because it's so intense, and so I was always, even when I was a line cook there, I worked out and I did high volume, high reps, so I'd have more stamina. So at the end of the night, when the wheels are falling off the bus, I was still strong mentally. And so I always had that commitment. When I decided to get back into the gym, another gym, it was to make me feel better. I knew that I've always known that if I don't feel great mentally or physically, I always have fitness to kind of bring me out of that, and healthy eating and all that stuff. So I went, I was at the gym, getting healthy for 2 or 3 years. When I found RX Fitness, it changed everything, because it's really about a strength program. It's about more than just going in there and pumping weights. And so as an old, I'm 51 now, as I got older, I realized that often people think, well, that's when you're slowing down. I wanted to stay healthy and be physically fit and have tons of energy so that I could continue and not dip down. Act 2, I guess, I'm in the best shape of my life. I'm mentally in the best shape of my life. And a huge part of that is because I've committed to fitness and health. And, I wanted to be that family or the dad and the parents who inspire the kids, like, the marathon runners, parents, and then their kids get into it. So I started doing obstacle course races, which is why I went to RX. I wanted to train differently. And I really missed that competition. And there's actually quite a correlation between not the competition, but the grind and the grit and the commitment to training for a race like that, and then doing it as it is in the kitchen. So I didn't want to be the older chef who can't keep up. Like I in my mind, I can still, cook everyone under the table and stay, work longer and harder, and be as physical as the young guys. So yeah, it's really important to me, and I think is the difference in me being in the place I am right now in a positive way, for sure.
Yeah, I love to hear that. And it's good for our listeners to know that that's available. Act 2, 3, 4, 5 can be fantastic. But you do have to make some commitments or some changes. And so that's really, really helpful.
Would you say, do you eat differently now that you are kind of out of that stressful situation and now you're committed to your health as well as your creativity? Do you eat differently? And because I know for me, a lot of people tell me, oh, it's hard to eat healthy. It doesn't taste very good. So tell us about that.
Yeah.
What are your suggestions?
For sure. I wouldn't say I ate horrible, for years, but, I have the leg up on most people being a chef, so I can prepare anything, really that I want to eat. What I'll say is now, having a normal schedule, meaning not, 3 to midnight and sleeping, up till 2, being able to eat regularly and time it and eat it in a normal hour, having kids, it's impossible at teenage years, especially with sports, that we all sit down every night, but we do often. I love to cook, and I cook more than I ever have in my entire life at home. And generally I eat as healthy as I possibly can. I go through phases where I'm super healthy and I might try keto or whatever. But in general, I'm just very aware of what I put in my body. And something else I was going to say, I kind of forget, but yeah, eating healthy is kind of a commitment. It does take a little extra work, and because I have the time and I'm very disciplined, I'll kind of meal prep in the beginning of the week where meats are all marinated, or maybe I'll cook a bunch of stuff so that I can just heat it up because we can eat a lot quicker. Being a chef is great because what I can do, it's ridiculous. I basically make 4 different meals every night because I can. Everyone wants something different. So I've created a monster, but I don't mind. I want to eat healthier or differently because I'm working out. I'm up at 4:30, and I need a little bit different nutrition than my kids and my wife. So.
That's actually a really great tip that you just mentioned there. Food prepping yes. At the beginning of the week, thinking about what you're going to have, having it prepared so that you can heat it up easier or you can throw it together easier. It leads to eating healthier and having your food taste better and being more creative. And so, yeah. Do you have any tips for us about that? Like any, anything for us to make it easier at home?
Let's see. I don't know specifically of dishes, but again, what I do is I'll buy a bunch of meats and I marinate them all on Monday. But I'll cook say, baked potatoes and rice, brown rice or whatever. And so when, because let's say my son has a lacrosse game and he comes home and he's eating at a different time, I can't stop and cook something from scratch. He's very hungry, or that I don't want to spend the time because I'm falling apart at not 7:30 because I'm so tired, So to be able to just heat those things up. But, again, to your point about eating healthy, if you prep the items that are healthy, you're going to eat those items. Right. If you don't have anything prepped, it's easy to just get a pizza, whatever. So, yeah, the tips are really just committing to that. Do it on a day of the week when you have more time, because I think most people get more hectic towards the end of the week. It's hard to Thursdays and Fridays are insane. There's a reason why they call pizza Friday is pizza night, So I go shopping, grocery shopping every Sunday morning, so that I know I have the product there. Generally, I won't cook on Sunday like that, but Monday is my day. I work from home on Monday, and then I'll prep in the evening, and I have 3-4 days worth of healthy stuff to eat. So this is my tip, I guess.
Yeah, that's excellent.
We'll take it. That's great advice.
So for our viewers and listeners going into their Act 2, what would you say? Do you have any other kernels or nuggets or anything that you wished you knew at your transition? Like anything about that you would like to share?
Wish I knew. I don't know if it's, if it's something I wish I knew. I think that maybe reflecting back on the experiences and what you've learned. So for me, for instance, like a lot of people, I was very impatient. And as a chef, most chefs are impatient, because it's such an immediate, urgent, type of business, and urgency is always there. And you want, you get used to having to react very quickly. And so when other people, though, it's frustrating. And I think that's part of being young. But the older I got, I realized that is my greatest attribute now, or thing that I've grown into, is being more patient, and in doing so, I'm able to manage my expectations, other people's expectations, enjoy things more, and then have the patience to persevere. So with my business that I started, it's just a little side gig, but to not put the pressure on myself to, like, I have to do everything right now, and in a month I want to launch this. It was a process that took 6 months, and it's still evolving. I'm wearing a T-shirt that I just got today. I don't even have logos made, stickers. I want, so I realized that that's just something that I look back and say, I was so impatient, and then kind of appreciating that, and maybe giving yourself a pat on the back that, hey, I've really grown in that area, and maybe that's my strength, and that's what I need to use as a building block towards the future. And this is one example. Being more conscientious to other people and listening better, and so I guess in a nutshell, my advice would be to look back on where you were and where you are today, and use those things that you've learned and grown as the building blocks for your next step. Second act.
I like that.
I love that. Yeah, that's great.
So with all that wisdom, Dave, what's next for you? Tell us what you're working on.
Well, certainly my business, DB Culinary Visions, I don't have an ultimate goal in terms of like how big I want. It's not something I'm trying to replace my current job with, but it is something I want to build for myself. As I mentioned, I would like to get my salsa into retail. I think it's just exceptional. It's something that, I could build a business around. But I'm being very patient with that, as I have time, and my focus is my full-time job. But what's next is, I'm using that as a kind of a vehicle for, Kate enjoyed one of my virtual cooking classes. I've done a bunch of those, and I think I'm pretty good at it, and I think that people really enjoy it. So I've always been, I have kind of a, rough goal in mind, but I want to do the things I'm doing really well and see where it takes me, and see what opportunities present itself. And being, again, learning more patience. I'm okay just letting that come to me. So, I've booked a few gigs, I think 5 different classes where, corporate companies have hired me to do a virtual cooking class for their, corporate employees or clients or whatever. So I'd like to, expand that a little bit and see where that takes me. Now that COVID, we're all out and about, I can certainly do in-person cooking classes. And, a lot of people say, hey, you should be a teacher, you're a great teacher. And I agree. It's something I think I, do pretty well, but I'm not so much about making a business out of being a teacher. I think I'm very generous in that if somebody asks me for help or a question or advice, I give it to them. There's no strings attached. And I feel as a chef, 30 plus years, I have this knowledge that I like to impart and pass along to friends and family, or really anybody that asks. I know, Steve, your husband, reached out to me and asked if, and I gave him all the information for my poke bowl so that he could do something at his, I think he did it for work. I'm fine with that. If it makes people happy, that makes me happy. Yeah. So, so to answer your question, I think my next act is to continue doing what I'm doing. I love my current job, and there's always challenges there, in a good way, and then see where this business takes me. My wife has helped me. We went to the farmer's market the other day, and so that's something great that we can share together. Hopefully my son will come and help. What else do I have down the road? I do a weekly meal program where every Sunday, so I launch a menu on Wednesdays and take orders through Friday, and then I prepare it in a communal kitchen, a shared kitchen, on Sundays, and then we deliver on Monday. So, I have a lot of local friends and stuff, and it's it's a little bit extra work, but I'm making people happy and I'm making a little money, and that might turn into something bigger. So who knows? But, so I'm not one to.
Yeah.
There's something to be said for that, being open and the patience. And I think you're giving us all permission to do that if you're just doing what you love and you do it well, and you don't necessarily have an expectation that accompanies it. Who knows what the outcome might be?
Right.
Absolutely.
Well, it's good. It's interesting you say that. What I've found going through this process and being part of that shared kitchen and being the farmers market, I'm meeting people similar to me in all different walks of life and ages. But, there was a woman who started an iced coffee business. And if you look at her website, she talks about being inspired by her mother and wanting to kind of honor, the lessons she taught, and that she's taken it into her business. And so that really resonated with me, in that I'm doing this because I want to, do it for me, but inspire maybe my kids and just see that, their father is, going after something that's just mine, and they can too. So being open and not having a big ego and or letting your ego get in the way of, I went to the farmer's market. Yeah, I'm a pretty well-known chef, but I'm just another guy at the farmer's market, doing the same thing that, the girl next to me with the iced coffee is doing. And like, awesome. I love that. That tickles me to meet people and to learn their stories and see that we're very similar in that way. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
It's great. It's so wonderful. I loved right at the beginning, you talked about having ADD and how that's a real virtue for the work that you do, and your story, but also your openness to reinvention and recreating yourself and opening yourself to the possibilities. It's just, I find it personally inspiring, but I think it's really wonderful for the people who'll be listening to know that you can be 40, 50, 60s, and just keep reinventing or opening yourself or doing the hard work that it takes to, be at the top of your game. Because there's nothing, you've got a lot of wisdom, and every year that you're in the business, you learn more skill, you gain more skill. And then ultimately, if it's just about, sharing that with people you love, that's a wonderful story to share, Dave. It's really great.
Really wonderful.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. I appreciate it. Yeah. It's been a rewarding year. I mean, COVID is such this whole pandemic's been weird, but there's so many great things that come out of it, and for me, this is just one of the aspects. I think I'm a better chef in my current job because of what we've gone through. I'm more compassionate to, the chefs who came back that I had to, furlough, just changes everything. So it's interesting that you're doing this podcast, because I think we all realize how many people are shifting gears and doing something different, and whether it's complete 360, 180, or if it's just take a little side path. Yes. This is going to resonate with a lot of people, sure.
Absolutely. Well, we could keep talking for a long, long time, but we want to thank you, David, so much for joining us today. I cannot wait for your salsa to come out. Like, I'm hungry right now. I want some chips and I want to try it so badly. And I don't know, would you share the poke bowl sauce maybe recipe with us?
Oh, of course. Actually, not a problem. I have a whole PDF.
Really?
In fact, and I assume you're local, but I make my salsa every week. So that's something that's always something I offer. So you can have it.
We can come in and
we're coming in.
Oh, we're coming in.
We're getting
it.
It's a date.
That would be fun. Oh, yeah. It's totally a date. We're doing it. We're
definitely.
And yes, we are so grateful for you. We're so grateful for your time and your wisdom. And we've received a lot of encouragement, a lot of inspiration. And, we're really grateful for this conversation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, and I want to make sure that you can find Chef David Blessing on Instagram and Facebook are really great places to find him. Chef David Blessing. Look for that on Instagram and Facebook. And that's where you'll lead to all of his other sites. But he is dbculinaryprovisions.com is another great place to go look and see this inspiring chef and what he's creating and putting out into the world.
Thank you, Chef. And thank you to our dynamic duo behind the scenes, our production team, Kathy Carswell and Susan Nagel, for making magic and keeping this podcast afloat.
Mm-hmm. And so, friends, it's left to me to say thank you, Dave, and to our listeners. Go forth, be brave, live well, and do good, because it's Act 2 and you're on.
Act 2 You're On was brought to you by Act 2 Share Our Stage.
You can find us at a2yo.com and also on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Don't keep us a secret. Share us with your friends.
Please listen and subscribe wherever you find your podcasts. You can support us using Patreon. Thanks for listening.